Chapter 117 The Lioness from Hedong roars sometimes. Rumors spread very quickly. Such is the new rumor of the love and hate between Dai Rong Princess and Jia Yu Emperor. The main idea was that Dai Rong Princess coveted the prosperity of Delong, and not wanting to return to the poor country of Jing, tried all she could to become one of the emperor's Feichin. Even more extreme was that Dai Rong Princess recommended herself in front of the emperor and empress. But who knew that she was rejected multiple times by the emperor? Due to her actions, the emperor became dissatisfied with the country of Jing and even rejected the request from the crown prince of Jing for an audience. There were others that said it was previously Dai Rong Princess who targeted the empress and the honorable officials because she wanted to enter the palace as Fei, so she specially spread rumors to blight the empress' reputation. In the subconsciousness of the people in the Jing city of Delong, they looked down at the kind of small country that was Jing. Previously, when they gossiped about how exceptional Dai Rong Princess was, no one ever said that Dai Rong Princess was better than the empress. They were only speculating that the emperor wanted something fresh and fancy Dai Rong Princess. When what had happened in the imperial palace reached the ears of the people of Delong, there was an explosion. The princess of Jing was shameless. The emperor didn't even want the princess when she recommended herself. She couldn't compare to a finger of the empress. Maybe she had nothing inside, and wanted to grab onto their Delong. Furthermore, others started to say that this princess of Jing had ulterior motives and wanted to enter the imperial palace of Delong to give birth to a son and take Delong's throne, to conquer Delong's lands. When Tuer, wearing the attire of the country of Jing, came back to the guest palace from the outside, his face was extremely nasty. He angrily burst into Jiao Xiang Yuan and saw Dai Rong venting her temper at a maid. He shouted, "You still have the time to be angry, our Jing has been completely humiliated by you. Don't shout at me, you aren't the ruler of Jing yet." Dai Rong had been embarrassed by He Heng and hadn't calmed down. After hearing Tuer use a critical tone whilst speaking to her, the embarrassment inside turned into anger. "Don't think that because you are now the crown prince, you can order me around. It's too early for that. I don't want to order you around." Tuer angrily kicked aside the bench in front of him, pointing at Dai Rong, demanding, "But think of what you have done since you came into Delong's Jing city. Has the prosperity of Delong really blinded your eyes?" "Yes, what's wrong if I'm blinded by Delong's prosperity?" Dai Rong defended with red eyes. "I am the most beautiful woman of Jing, the most favored daughter of mother. Why can't I live the most luxurious life? The Feipin of Delong aren't as beautiful as me. Why can't I enter the palace?" "Because the empress is stronger than you," Tuer shouted. Seeing his Mimi refusing to change, his voice was frigid as he continued, "I already told you. The imperial couple of Delong are deeply in love. The Feipin and the Hogong is nothing more than decorations. Comparing yourself to the Feipin, that means you also know that you can't compare to Delong's empress. Where can I not compare with her?" Dai Rong was furious, her voice growing in pitch, "Because she's from Delong's nobility." "You're wrong. The empress isn't Delong's nobility." Tuer scornfully looked at his Mimi who thought herself clever. "When you and the Qin clan allied to scheme against the empress, didn't you ask about the empress' birth? The empress mother died early, her father and stepmother were not loving and have been demoted and lost their home. Her family is a stain on her. But even so, the emperor treats her the same. Even to the point that on the coronation decree, he wrote that the empress was peerless in the world and to have the empress was a blessing from the heavens. But you, where did you get the confidence to think you were better than the empress?" Dai Rong shook her head as she rejected, "No, the Qin family said that the emperor treats the empress well only because of the Tian family, so it's impossible. The Tian family has a good reputation but no real power. All they have was given to them by the emperor. Did you think that Delong's emperor is a useless and stupid ruler?" Tuer snorted, "My pitiful Mimi, you were tricked by the Qin family." Dai Rong froze. A beat later, she looked in disbelief at Tu Air. Why do you know so much about DeLong, you? Did he already scheme for the position of crown prince beforehand, so that's why he knew so much about DeLong? You are finally smart for once. Tu Air saw that she had finally reacted and smiled as he walked in front of her. I'm not like you, so spoiled by mother that I can't distinguish important matters from other ones. I understand better than you what is called circumstances, what is putting effort on crucial matters. Therefore, you lost, my pitiful Mimi. Dai Rong staggered. For what seemed to be the first time, she looked at her useless and average gauge, but after looking at the other's slightly smiling face, she couldn't say anything. In Tian Chi Palace, Chu Qingju smiled as she looked at the men and women kneeling by her feet. One of those in a worn sky-blue robe was a woman she was familiar with. She played with a jade scepter in her hands and sighed, lamenting, Ben Gong hadn't thought that your Qin family was also involved in the rumors around Jing. If it wasn't for the emperor's investigation, perhaps Ben Gong would still be in the dark. Speaking thus far, she turned to smile at He Hing sitting by her side. Bai Lu at least was jolie for 2 years with Ben Gong. The Qin family is too ruthless. If the empress wants to kill or torture, you don't need to say these things. Before Qin Bai Lu could finish, her mouth was covered by a matron beside her. The matron kowtowed with a pale face. This criminal woman hasn't taught her daughter properly. Please, Emperor and Empress, forgive her. Chu Qingju watched as Qin Furen kowtowed to plead for her daughter, yet Qin Bai Lu was still staring at her with a face full of hatred. She couldn't help but sigh. Qin Bai Lu, Ben Gong just doesn't understand why you would hate Ben Gong. Ever since we met for the first time, it was always you who deliberately made things difficult for Ben Gong. When has Ben Gong ever schemed against you? Qin Bai Lu took away her mother's hand, and smiled scornfully. It's natural that you don't understand why I hate you. But that year, if Xiandi hadn't suddenly changed his decision when he decreed the marriages, our positions would be switched. The person sitting would be me, the person kneeling at the bottom would be you. By this time, the members of the Qin family were so frightened, their faces were the color of dirt. Qin Furen didn't dare to stop her daughter's mouth anymore, and could only tremble as she knelt at the side. When Chu Qingju heard something this hilarious, she instantly laughed out loud. She didn't have any more interest in talking with Qin Bai Lu. How strange was her brain that she would push all the misfortunes onto her. Chu Qingju did not believe that she herself had such great abilities. Or was it also her who'd ordered He Yuan to divorce Qin Bai Lu? How Xiandi decreed the marriage, it was Xiandi who made the decision. Could she have forced Xiandi to make a decision? Once, Zhen only thought that the present Qin family was just vulgar, but didn't think that they even didn't have no brains at all. He Hing, who had been silent the entire time, glared icily at Qin Bai Lu. Just a thing like you dares to compare to Empress, it is laughable. But that year, if Xiandi didn't marry her to Emperor, then she would be Rui Wang Fei. Even if I couldn't enter Emperor's eyes, she wouldn't be your woman. Qin Bai Lu's smile carried hate and insanity. Do you think that I'm the only person like this? You're wrong. Even He Yuan is regretful about the decreed marriage. Right now, he's thinking about Emperor's good Empress. By now, the members of the Qin family wanted to strangle Qin Bai Lu. If it wasn't for the Furen of the head of the family, who was strong in her conduct, they wouldn't have tolerated a divorced woman living in their ancestral home. If they knew beforehand that she would say such insane things, do insane things, even if they had to start a conflict, they would have sent her away rather than let her drag down the entire clan. He Heng's face was frigid as ice. No man was willing to hear about how his beloved woman was being thought of by another man. Furthermore, this man had nearly taken over his position. Have you ever heard of destiny? Chu Qingju calmly looked at Qin Bai Lu, as though she was looking at a stray dog. You said that Xiandi changed the partners that we were decreed marriage to. That means, in Xiandi's heart, I was the person most suited to Emperor. I am the woman fated for the emperor. You can be jealous of Ben Gong, hate Ben Gong. Ben Gong just received the emperor's love. What can you do to me? Qin Bailu had pushed all of their conflicts onto Yuan. Then, Chu Qingju would purposefully distort it into Qin Bailu being jealous of her receiving the emperor's affections. The two matters seemed to be the same matter, but the feeling it gave others was quite different. She wanted He Heng to know. The person she wanted to capture was him. The person she paid attention to was him. Only like this would there be no danger left hidden. It would even increase the trust and affection He Heng had towards her. Even the heavens helped Ben Gong. What do you have that can compare to Ben Gong? Chu Qingju turned to look at He Heng. As expected, she saw that he was already smiling. She glared at him, mouthing womanizer, before turning to declare at Qin Bailu, you are discontent that you lost to Ben Gong, and cooperated with the Princess of Jing to purposefully spread rumors to malign the reputations of me and the officials of Delong. Such malicious aims. It's no wonder that even the heavens helped Ben Gong become the woman of the emperor. If you had become the empress of Delong, wouldn't have the world fallen into chaos? You. Qin Bailu hadn't thought Chu Qingju would give such a speech. She opened her mouth to start cursing, but Qin Furen by her side unexpectedly threw a heavy slap on her face, throwing her onto the ground. Shut up. Qin Furen sobbed, you faithless, unfilial daughter. Do you want to kill our entire family? Other than the crying of Qin Furen, there were no other sounds in the hole. Qin Bailu covered her face, not looking at her own mother, but at the emperor and empress sitting in front of her, her eyes full of hate. Grabbing out the sharp silver hairpin out of her hair, she suddenly stood and rushed towards Chu Qingju. Nyang nyang. On the side, Mu Jin was so frightened that she threw herself from behind Chu Qingju to halfway across Chu Qingju. There was a sound of porcelain breaking, and then she heard a smothered grunt from nearby. Then the entire hall started to make a racket. Raising her head in puzzlement, she saw Qin Bailu lying on the side in a sorry state, the emperor in front of the empress, one of the corners of his robe creased. Emperor, are you all right? Chu Qingju stood, her face fearful as she examined He Heng from top to toe. She released a breath, and then in a voice filled with anger, she shouted, what are you doing? There's so many people, what are you doing in front of me? The entire hall instantly became silent, all those that were shocked, that had been pushing Qin Bailu down, been asking for mercy. At one point, it was as though their necks were being strangled so that they were unable to make a sound. There's so many people in the hall, who let you go in front of me, showing off how long your legs are. Ah! Do you not have regard for your life? Who needed you to save me? I'm not an idiot, would I have just sat for her to stab? Do you have brains? Ah! Mu Jin stared with wide eyes and mouth at the empress flipping out. As she watched the emperor unconsciously step back as the empress ranted at him, her shoulders couldn't help but shake as she swallowed. At the side, Qian Chang Xan, Ming He and the others also stood with dumbstruck eyes. Who had seen the empress be so valiant? Who had even seen the empress scold the emperor? As the personal attendants of the emperor, they should stop the finger that the empress was poking onto the emperor's chest, should reproach the empress for her disrespectful conduct, but for some reason, they didn't dare speak, and didn't dare to even breathe loudly. Go away. Chu Qingju kicked aside the head of the Qin family who had been kneeling at the very front, scolding, they all said your Qin family is an educated family, but look at what you've done. No sense of propriety, uncivilized conduct, disloyal, and immoral. Calling the Qin family an educated family, it brings shame to the word educated. Qin Bailu's outrageousness, it was all because of how you all spoiled her. After the Qin family was criticized, they finally managed to react. All of them banged their heads on the ground, begging for the emperor to spare their lives. For their family to have someone who tried to kill the Empress, that was a serious crime worthy of killing off their 9 generations. Qingju. He Hing reached out to hold Chu Qingju's hands and discovered her hands were slightly trembling. He gave an ingratiating smile. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Anger is bad for your health. Chu Qingju pushed away his hand, directly sitting back on the chair. She picked up a teacup and lowered her head to drink, not looking at him again. Qian Chang Xian and Ming He silently retracted their left foot, which they had mustered up the courage to extend out. Since even the emperor who had been scolded was full of smiles, as servants, what could they say? But the empress when she was angry was really too frightening. Not even the roars of the lioness from Hedong could compare. The daughter of Qin family is of ill conduct and dared to kill the emperor and empress. Heaven itself will not tolerate such behavior. Capital punishment will occur in 3 days. He Hing saw Chu Qingju was refusing to acknowledge him and sat down beside her, ordering in an icy voice. The Qin family didn't teach their daughter well, reckless and dared to slander empress and officials of court. All are to be jailed and sentenced at a later date. Spare us, emperor. Before the members of the Qin family could plead for mercy, others covered their mouths and dragged them down. As for Qin Bailu who tried to kill Chu Qingju, she had been kicked unconscious by He Hing and didn't stir when she was dragged off. Leave. He Hing looked at the interior of the hall and waved his hand. After everyone else had left, he gathered Chu Qingju in his arms. Don't be angry. I know that you were worried about me. Who's worried about you? Chu Qingju pushed him. Seeing that it was futile, she didn't waste any more energy, allowing him to embrace her. A silver hairpin, even if it entered the body, wouldn't be fatal. Furthermore, as I once said to you, I practiced martial arts. Would I have no way of dealing with a woman? He Hing gently patted her back. You already scolded me, so don't be angry, all right? What would have happened if it hit your organs? Chu Qingju frowned as she declared, I don't want to be a widow so young. All right, I know I was wrong. Don't be angry. Let's go see Tun Tun, he's certainly missing us. Even though he had been scolded, He Hing felt happy. If it wasn't out of concern for him, based on Qingju's normal behavior, she wouldn't have acted so inappropriately. It was somewhat useless point, but this feeling was still really refreshing. All of you take care to control your mouths. Qian Chang Xian looked at the palace maids and Taijian who'd came out of the hall. Even if they were all close attendants of the emperor and empress, he still had to say the words, if there is the slightest leak of what happened, you don't need what's on your necks anymore. Everyone gave their agreement. Mu Jin looked with trepidation at the hall behind her, and couldn't resist wiping the fine sweat on her forehead. Empress was really very amazing. Chapter 118 The Qin family was imprisoned, and the eldest daughter of the Qin family who had once been Rui Wang Fei was decreed to be beheaded. Many people were speculating that this outcome, in addition to the fact that Qin Bailu had tried to kill the empress, was related to the previous rumors that had been spread throughout Jing. But disregarding all that, it was true that the conduct of the Qin family in recent years had gradually lost the literary and scholarly style of the educated families. There were even some storytellers who said that the present head of the Qin family was a shame on the ancestors of the Qin clan. Some reminisced on the conduct of the Qin Shi in the past. When they returned, they used the matter of the Qin family to teach their descendants so they did not walk the same road as the Qin family. When Dai Rong heard that Qin Bailu was to be publicly beheaded, she was so scared that she didn't dare to step outside. More than anyone, she knew as to what had really happened. In the beginning, when she and Qin Bailu had plotted to wreck the reputation of the empress, Qin Bailu had told her many things about the Hogong of Dalong. She hadn't thought that this matter would be uncovered so quickly and that Qin Bailu, the mastermind, couldn't even keep her own life. On the day of Qin Bailu's execution, the autumn air was refreshing and many came out to watch. But until the moment just before she was executed, no one had come to send her off. She looked blankly at her surroundings, and suddenly saw a man on a white horse behind the crowds. She stilled, tears suddenly streaming out of her dull eyes. At 13, her heart had moved for this man. At 15, she had married him. At 17, she had been divorced by him. At the moment before death, the one she saw was still him. The black cloth covered her eyes. She twisted her head, wanting to have one more glance at him. In the end, she couldn't escape the executioner blocking her eyes. She heard the sound of cursing and mockery. Even though she concentrated, she didn't hear his voice. That year at the palace banquet, if she didn't encounter him, that would have been good. The only thing to blame was that at that time, she was too young, and that the stunning beauty of He Yuan had taken her time. Maybe, who she really hated wasn't Chu Qingju or Chu Yusu. All her hate, it really came from discontent, the discontent she had towards him. If a person could live their life again, she would become a normal woman, marry a normal man. Either rich or poor, but at least she could receive a portion of feelings that belonged to her. Just like Chu Qingju, who had a man that protected her, and someone she could rely on for an entire lifetime. It's time, proceed. The noon gold sun shone off the blade the executioner raised, scattering bits of silver light. The brawny man took a mouthful of liquor and blew it over the large blade. Then he slowly raised it and swung down hard. A smile appeared at the corner of Qin Bailu's lips, as though she once again saw the bright youth at the palace banquet. Then, the world plunged into darkness. The hand that He Yuan held the reins with, tightened and then slowly relaxed. He pulled on the reins to turn the horse, not looking at the executioner's platform. He gave a sigh, ordering, "He Fu Er, get someone to bury her properly." When people were executed, if there was no family to take their corpse, they would be thrown into a mass burial ground in the end. Although he didn't have feelings for her and in the end, there was only mutual dislike, He Yuan hadn't reached the stage where he could see his former woman die without a coffin. He Fu Er saw his master's expression wasn't well and hurriedly indicated for the people behind him to collect Qin Bailu's body. "Wang Yi, the sun is fierce right now. Let's return to the Fu." He Yuan raised an eyebrow at him. "Let's go." He Fu Er rushed up to take hold of the reins, guiding the horse in the direction of the Jun Wang Fu. When he was going to turn around a corner, he couldn't resist turning back to look at the executioner's platform that was now cleared of the crowd. A person executed at noon. After being shown it by such a strong sun, even the soul might have disappeared. But attempting to kill the empress, she really had courage. No wonder the emperor would give out such a decree. She really did it to herself. It was lucky that Wang Yi had divorced her a long time ago. Otherwise, even the Jun Wang Fu would have been affected by her. Dai Rong didn't dare to go to the place where Qin Bailu had been executed. Hearing that Qin Bailu's corpse had been collected by people from Rui Jun Wang Fu, she sat restlessly in her room. If someone walked outside her room, she became so scared that she would tremble. The emperor would even order to execute a daughter of a noble family like Qin Bailu. If he found evidence of her participating in the rumors, what would be her outcome, and would the country of Jing also be involved? She now regretted working together with Qin Bailu. How dumb was she to believe the words of a woman who had been divorced by the imperial house? After taking a drink of cold tea to suppress the terror in her heart, as the teacup left her lips, Dai Rong saw her maid push open the door and come in with a face full of panic to report, "Princess, His Majesty the Emperor of Dalong summons you and Crown Prince." The teacup in her hand dropped to the floor. Dai Rong stood up in fright. Through the doorway, she could see a Taijian of Dalong standing outside. She staggered and forced out a smile. "Wait for me to change. Please, Princess, don't waste time." Emperor and Empress are both very busy. Princess should hurry to enter the palace. Qian Changxian walked inside, his face expressionless as he whipped the duster in his hand. Princess, please. Dai Rong recognized him as the personal Taijian of the Emperor of Dalong and didn't dare to offend him. She forced a smile and followed Qian Changxian out of the room. When she went outside, she saw Tu Er was also wearing his normal clothes, his expression unwell. Crown Prince, Princess, please. Qian Changxian raised an eyebrow. Don't make the emperor wait. Seeing Qian Changxian's attitude, the uneasiness Dai Rong had inside grew even more until she couldn't seem to breathe. When they had entered the imperial palace and they followed Qian Changxian and the others into Tianqi Palace, Dai Rong could hear the sounds of the emperor and empress talking from outside the door. After Qian Changxian went in to report, the sounds of conversation stopped. She walked in amidst the cold stares of the palace maids and Taijian in the surroundings. Chu Qingju was playing with a kaleidoscope. Seeing Dai Rong and Tu Er enter, she handed the kaleidoscope to a palace maid and resumed a proper sitting posture. After the two made their greetings, she only drank tea silently, allowing He Hing to converse with the two of them. Zhen heard that Huguo Princess was very close to Qin Shi. What does Princess have to say? He Hing looked coldly at Tu Er and Dalong. Just one sentence was enough to frighten the two into kneeling on the ground. He looked at the two people kneeling in front of him, his expression still ugly. In the past, the country of Jing was one of the subordinate countries that Dalong put importance on, but your conduct has made Jin extremely disappointed. When Tu Er heard the words, his face became scared. He quickly made a full bow, replying, "The honored His Majesty the Emperor, my Jing's loyalty to you can be seen by the heavens. Please, Your Majesty, don't lightly believe the rumors. Whether or not it's just rumor, both of you should know very well." He Hing thought about the rumors that had gone through the city of Jing and what Qin Bailu had done, his brow furrowing. Jin only wanted to hear how the country of Jing will give my Dalong an explanation. Tu Er's forehead already had sweat forming. He gritted his teeth and gave a kowtow. "Your Majesty, we are willing to increase our tribute by 2/10 to show our loyalty to Dalong." "My Dalong doesn't lack for those kind of things," He Hing coldly sneered. If Zhen's empress and the court officials had been harmed by the rumors, even if the country of Jing was flattened, it still wouldn't calm Zhen's anger. "Please, Your Majesty, don't be angry." Tu Er's sweat slid down his face to land on the ground, but he didn't dare to raise a hand to wipe. He went forward 2 steps, begging, "Chen's sister is ignorant. Please, Your Majesty, have mercy. Please have mercy." Chu Qingju looked at the sorry state of Tu Er. Even Tu Er was calling himself a subject in front of them. It could be seen that Tu Er had no other solutions left. She hadn't wanted to join this matter, but He Hing had to call her over. Reality proved it, she didn't like seeing others kowtowing to her. "Your Majesty, all the wrongs are this subject's wrongs. It was this subject that was greedy for the wealth of Dalong, and has nothing to do with the people of Jing. Please, Your Majesty, spare the people of Jing." Dai Rong is willing to endure all of the punishment. Dai Rong thought about how poor the country of Jing was. They couldn't bear the pressure of a tribute that was 2/10 higher. Even if she didn't want to admit it, she had to confess that she had done something wrong. "Please, Emperor, spare Jing. Jing is a poor place. Our people have no more strength to endure war and increased yearly tributes." Hearing that, Chu Qingju looked again at Dai Rong. At this critical time, this Huguo princess wasn't stupid to the bone and finally knew how to protect her people. In reality, how many people in the world could resist the temptation of wealth and prosperity? He Hing looked indifferently at the pair of siblings, entirely unmoved. This was between countries. His priority was protecting the interests of his country before he had the time to divide some sympathy to other people. He was the Emperor of Dalong, not the Emperor of the country of Jing. Their standpoints were different, so how would there be sympathy? Since Princess knows that the country of Jing cannot stand Jin's rage, then why do such a daring thing? He hinged through what had been discovered in front of the two siblings. If Jin ordered the army to Jing, it is for your crimes, Huguo Princess. Dai Rong didn't dare to look at those things, only fearfully begged, this subject was possessed, this subject is willing to be punished. Please, Emperor, spare the people of Jing. She didn't want to think about it. If Delong really sent their army, how would Mother and the people of Delong look at her? Would it be disappointment? Anger? Or would it be hatred? Emperor, this subject is willing to use her life to apologize for the offense. Please, Emperor, spare the innocent people. Dai Rong knelt with a straight body, looking at the exceptional yet ruthless Emperor. There was no sign of the initial seductiveness on her face now. She looked at Chu Qingju, who had been silently drinking tea, and walked towards her on her knees. Dai Rong gave a heavy kowtow. This subject was ill-mannered and offended the Empress. Please, Empress, give punishment. Chu Qingju looked down at Dai Rong for losing her composure in her greed for prosperity, was offended by her, and Qin Bailu for spreading rumors to slander her. But right now, Dai Rong seemed to have given everything up, and became the country of Jing's Huguo princess, willing to use her death to make up for her mistakes rather than harm her people. People who knew their wrongs were more soothing to the eyes than people who stubbornly didn't change even into death. The most important factor was that Dai Rong was a princess of the country of Jing, and not one of Delong's citizens. One Jing was easy to deal with, but if other subordinate countries started to rebel due to this matter, then even if it wasn't hard for Delong to deal with all the countries, it still wasn't a good thing. An unnecessary war happening to the common people, it was a disaster. Emperor, why don't we send a letter to the Queen of Jing about the matter and let her give an explanation to our Delong? Chu Qingju put down the teacup and opened, the matter has already passed, I don't want a war to start because of me. He Hing sighed, but if the rumors had really caused bad consequences, then what? I know the intentions of the Emperor, Chu Qingju smiled, I'm a lazy person. I don't like to care about what's happening at court, but I know one thing, the people are the ones who suffer in wars. A beat later, He Hing nodded, Jin understands what you wish for. This matter will be handed to the Queen of Jing so she may give an explanation to Delong. The historian at the side recorded the actions of the Emperor and Empress. The 10th month of the first year of Jiayu, the Princess of Jing offended the Empress. The Emperor was angry and wished to raise an army against Jing. The Empress urged against, saying that the people suffered in war. The Emperor heard this, and the anger disappeared. /N Chapter 119 The song ends, the people leave at the end of the 10th month, the weather was already very cold. Each of the subordinate countries were preparing for their journey back to their own countries, so before departure, Delong held a banquet and invited all the envoys from the subordinate countries. He Hing didn't mention the matter of the country of Jing again in front of Chu Qingju. She didn't ask either. There wasn't a rule in Delong that the Hogong couldn't participate in politics, but she was very clear of her own limitations. A person who couldn't even finish memorizing the art of war, it was better if they didn't go out into the world to wreck the people. She had been a manager in her previous life. She knew how to use the desires of other people. Knew how to grasp another to benefit herself. This was the little smarts that belonged to her. But she was self-aware and knew what she was good at, and what she wasn't. Just like when Feng Zijin took advantage of Han Liangdi to harm her, she went along with the plan and used it to take care of a woman who was constantly scheming against her. Shuge Taifai had already moved out of the Hogong. The two Empress Dowagers were at odds with her, so how could they allow Shuge Taifei's people to remain in the palace? The fact that Shuge Taifei had been implicated in the matter was due her scheming in the background, but the greatest influence came from the two Empress Dowagers. They simply used Feng Zijin and Han Liangdi to pull Shu Gui Taifei into the mud, to make her life worse than death. She had guessed the intentions of the two Empress Dowagers, so she allowed Feng Zijin to pull the crime onto her body, and then watched as she dug her own grave and lost her life. What person, after they developed, would still tolerate their opponent who'd once bullied them? History had the story of the human swine. Here, there was the living lesson that was Shu Gui Taifei. As she sat in the phoenix carriage and passed by the pavilion Han Liangdi once sang in, Chu Qingju tightened her arms around Tun Tun. Her eyes steadily became calm. She wouldn't allow herself to fall to the end that Shu Gui Taifei got. The Empress has arrived. Passing through the main doors of Wanhe Hall, the vermilion phoenix robe slid silently across the carpet. She disregarded the envoys kneeling on both sides with the officials. Walking to the bottom of the 9 jade steps, she bowed to Hihing, greetings to the Emperor. Quickly rise, Hihing stood from the dragon chair. Seeing Chu Qingju walk up the jade stairs, he held her hand to sit down. Chu Qingju turned to look at the people still kneeling, announcing, "Everyone, please rise." "Thanks, Emperor." "Thanks, Empress." Chu Qingju smiled and tilted her head. After the people stood, she took away her gaze and turned to stare at Hihing. She continued, "Having made everyone wait, Ben Gong will self-penalize with a cup." She raised the plum wine in front of her, and using her sleeve to hold the wine cup, she threw her head back to drink. No one really dared to let the Empress drink a cup as penalty like that, and followed in raising their own cups to drink. The Emperor had arrived first, but he wasn't angry at the Empress' actions. They don't have to meddle in other people's business even more. Jin's son was just crying in Fu Shou Palace. The Empress had no other way but to turn back. Hihing explained with a smile, "It's the duty of parents. Once the child is crying, we can't sit still." Fu Shou Palace. That was the place that Xingmu Empress Dowager lived. His Highness Imperial's son was crying unstoppably over there. Did something happen? If it had just been normal crying, would the Empress make a special trip there? Everyone felt that something was fishy about the matter. However, after seeing that the Emperor and Empress looked normal, they presumed that it wasn't a major incident and smiled as they took up the topic of child-rearing. Even the officials who didn't interact with their own children usually suddenly seemed to become a multi-talented house husband, as though they had personally raised their children. The mood of the banquet instantly rose. The dancing and songs continued. People toasted and changed cups. It was very harmonious. Hihing asked quietly at Chu Qingju's ear, "Are the two Empress Dowagers all right?" Just a shock, Chu Qingju raised a wine cup. She had a smile, but her words were cold. The people of Muhu were cautious. Those things had been found before they could get near Tun Tun. This person of Shu Gui Taifei hid too deeply, even the two Muhu hadn't found them out. Originally, when she had been preparing to travel to the farewell banquet at Wanhe Hall, she had met Ding Mama of Fu Shou Palace right as she came out of the door to notify her of the matter. Immediately, she lost interest in Wanhe Hall and turned to travel to Fu Shou Palace. The two Empress Dowagers were women who were skilled, and they'd quickly found the person, even uncovering the fact that Shu Gui Taifei was behind it. She hadn't thought that even though Shu Gui Taifei had been sent to the imperial tomb, she was discontented Hawk to have planned such a major attack before leaving. What were the things found? Hiheng's face became dark. Some dirty blood. It must have been the bloodstains of a person seriously ill. But I'm afraid that Shu Gui Taifei's person didn't know that anything Tun Tun uses. I'll get them to inspect even a handkerchief before usage. Chu Qingju smirked. I heard that Shu Gui Taifei's life at the imperial tomb is extremely lavish. Since she's so dissatisfied, I have already ordered for them to decrease her allowance, and that each year except for the Mid-Autumn Festival, no one is allowed to disturb her peace. When a woman gets old, if her temper is still so fiery, then she needs peaceful days to calm her emotions. I think that Shu Gui Taifei will soon know how good peaceful days are. A destitute lifestyle, the people were all dumb and deaf. She wanted to see how Shu Gui Taifei will live in the future. If she died, that was letting her off too easy. If she couldn't make Shu Gui Taifei understand what regret was, how would she be at ease? He heard the meaning in her words and didn't expand further on the topic. He knew just how fierce women were when they were protecting their children. Just like in the past when Muhu had protected him using every scheme so that no one could hinder them. To hear the imperial words and see the honored Your Majesty the Emperor, and to see the prosperity of Dalong, it wasn't a wasted journey. Envoy of Duohan, Aji Ka wishes for Dalong to flourish for 1,000 years. As the envoy for Duohan, Aji Ka knew he wasn't favored by Dalong, so he put his own status very low when he entered the city of Jing this time in hopes that the people of Dalong believed that Duohan was sincere in their allegiance to Dalong. Many thanks to Aji Ka to Ren's lucky words. He raised a wine cup towards Aji Ka and took a sip of wine. Aji Ka saw him drink the wine he toasted and his face became joyful. Chen represents the people of Duohan and toasts you. The loyalty of my Duohan to Dalong can be witnessed by the heavens. He threw his head back and drained the cup. Then he flipped the cup. Not a drop spilled out. If Duohan betrays the oath, then let the heavens send down disasters to punish us. Jin receives the loyalty of the people of Duohan. He smiled as he finished off the wine in his cup. Jin will remember Aji Ka's oath today. After Aji Ka sat down, he looked smugly at Tu Er and Dai Rong sitting below him. With the actions of this Dai Rong princess beforehand, his Duohan wasn't the most horrid subordinate country in the hearts of the people of Dalong. It seemed that he should be grateful to this beautiful princess. Dai Rong saw the smug smile on Aji Ka's face and a grimace appeared on her own. She raised her head to look at the emperor and empress sitting at the top of the 9 jade stairs. It was these two people who made her understand what was really regret, what was fear and what was prosperity. At last, her gaze landed on He Heng's smiling face. To this young emperor, her heart had really moved. Humane, kind, charismatic, and full of true love for the empress. But it was a pity that the true love didn't belong to her. Tu Er saw his Mimi was still gazing at the emperor of Dalong and demanded with a frown, "Mimi, haven't you given up yet?" Dai Rong grimaced, "There's no giving up. From beginning to end, he never even properly looked at me." It was this man who made her understand that not everyone loved her. Maybe the reason that the people of the country of Jing loved her that much, aside from her beauty, was her identity. She was a princess of the country of Jing. Even if she might not be the future ruler of Jing, but she was still a hope for the future of Jing. She received their devotions, but what she had wanted was the prosperity of Dalong. If the people of the country of Jing knew of her actions, how disappointed would they be? She should be grateful to the Empress of Dalong. If it wasn't for this exceptional Empress, she might not be able to sit in this hall, and the country of Jing would be expecting the iron hoof of Dalong's stupidity once in a lifetime was enough. Her position didn't allow for her to keep being stupid, and even more, continue to make mistakes. Otherwise, the result might be the damnation of Jing. This subject toasts the Honorable Empress a cup, and wishes for the Empress and Emperor's love to be stronger than gold and everything be smooth. Dai Rong stood and raised a wine cup at Chu Qing Ju. This subject is grateful for the Honorable Empress for giving this subject the chance to grow up. Please, Empress, receive this subject's sincere bow. She made a bow towards Chu Qing Ju that in Jing carried the meaning of goodwill and respect, and then drained the wine. Chu Qing Ju looked at Dai Rong below. In just a few days, this Huguo princess had rapidly grown up. She couldn't see a hint of the past self. It was like a fragile and spoiled girl had become a strong woman. Not many people could make such a change. Was it Qin Bailu's death that shocked her awake? Or was it the lives of the people of the country of Jing that made her understood what was responsibility? But no matter what, Chu Qingju accepted Dai Rong's toast. She smiled and raised a wine cup, responding, "Every person has a time when they are wrong. The crucial part is whether or not they could turn back, if they could understand." Ben Gong hopes for the friendship between DeLong and the country of Jing to continue for a long time, and the people of Jing to live long and secure lives. Many thanks for the lucky words of the Honorable Empress. My Jing, generation after generation, will always be loyal to DeLong. Dai Rong's eyes became red. She knew that this was the Empress promising that DeLong wouldn't send soldiers into Jing. She switched for another cup of wine and unhesitatingly drank it down. On the day the envoys left, the autumn winds were blowing and wild chrysanthemums were blooming all over the suburbs of the city of Jing. Chu Qingju and He Hing stood on the tall city gates, watched as the envoys made a 3-bow 9 kowtow greeting to them before gradually leaving in the carriages. The carriages slowly went further away, and disappeared into the horizon. Chu Qingju brushed aside the hair that had been blown free by the wind. She sighed, stating, "The song ends, people leave, flowers blooming over the entire city, so it isn't that lonely." He Hing saw her expression was slightly depressed and held her hand to lead her down off the tower. "Some people leave, some come. It's all good when we are still at the original place." Chu Qingju turned to look at him, a clean smile at the corner of her lips. It was faint, but very real. "I, the human swine, is the story of the consort Qi. Emperor Gaozu, the founder of the Han dynasty, was extremely favored and her son a contender for the throne. Consort Qi tried to persuade the emperor many times to crown her son and her ambitions were well known. Empress Lu was her opponent. In the end, the court supported Empress Lu's son who succeeded the throne and Prince Rui had to leave for his own lands as Wang. However, Empress Lu, now Grand Empress Lu, wanted mother and son dead. Her own son, the new emperor, kept his brother, Prince Rui, with him constantly to prevent his mother from putting in poison her assassination attempts but ultimately failed. Then the Grand Empress chopped off Consort Qi's limbs, took out her eyes, sliced off her ears, and ruined her voice before putting her in a latrine. Chapter 120 Feng seeks Huang. When the plum blossoms of Delong were just blooming, snow the size of goose feathers began to land in the city of Jing. The entire Jing city was enveloped in a layer of silver silk. Chu Qingju, dressed in a fox skin coat, stood under the leaves and reached out to hold the icy snowflakes. Watching the snow fall, she didn't seem to be as excited as she once had been. It was like anything else beautiful. No matter how beautiful, it was just like normal once one got used to it. She took her hand back and focused on the snowflake on her hand. It did seem to have 6 petals and was extremely beautiful upon inspection. She used a handkerchief to wipe away the snowflake on her hands and grasped a hand pot. "It's Rui Wang's wedding tomorrow. Nothing can go wrong with what is to be bestowed tomorrow. Nyang Nyang, don't worry, Nubi has already closely inspected them." Mu Jing saw the Empress wasn't trying to catch snowflakes anymore and put up an umbrella to block the flying snowflake for her. In a small voice, she suggested, "Nyang Nyang, the wind is heavy here, let's go back." Chu Qingju nodded. She pulled on the red fox skin cape on her body and slowly walked into the vermilion corridors. The palace boots made muffled sounds as they stepped on the stone slabs. She expressionlessly traveled through the long corridors, past a moon door, saw the Taijian that was sweeping the snow, and having finally learned to disregard their distorted backs, and sat down on the comfortable and grand phoenix carriage. "Proceed." The phoenix carriage swayed slightly and then started to slowly move. As they traveled through a patch of plum trees, she pushed aside the silk curtain and saw a branch of red plum blossoms peeking out from the walls. She could barely detect the faint scent of the plum flowers. The phoenix carriage slowly proceeded. In her vision, that blooming red plum flower gradually distanced itself and then it couldn't be seen. She suddenly felt depressed, and put down the curtain. For some reason, she suddenly remembered the instant when she first opened her eyes in this world. A painting of red plum blossoms had been hanging on the wall. The writing of the woman at the corner of the art had been graceful and refined, just like the plum flowers in that yard. Not as grand as other flowers, but there was a delicate fragrance. Greetings to the Empress. The speed of the phoenix carriage slowed. Chu Qingju heard a somewhat familiar voice. When she lifted the curtain, she saw a woman bent beside the phoenix carriage. After a second, she finally responded, giving a faint smile and acknowledging, "Luo Guipin, please rise." "Many thanks to Empress." Luo Yinxiu straightened her body. She didn't stare at Chu Qingju's face, only submissively looking at the ground. "It's so cold out, why isn't Guipin traveling on a step carriage?" Chu Qingju looked at the worn fur cape on her body. Her brow furrowed and then she ordered, "Huang Yang, go take a look in the Department of Household Affairs and see if they slighted Guipin. If someone was reckless enough to shortchange their superiors, then it's 30 blows." Luo Yinxiu bowed again, "Thanks for Empress concern. Pinky is fine." Chu Qingju understood the rules of the palace very well. Gaze at the higher-ups and step on the low ones. Flattering those who were favored. In the time of Xiandi, they even dared to shortchange the Empress, more or less Luo Yinxiu, who had no favor or power. Thinking about it, she said in a slightly heavy voice, "The carriage, furnishings, and food that a third-rank Guipin should have, Ben Gong believes the people of the Department of Household Affairs should understand. Huang Yang, go tell them. If they can't figure out those things, they don't need to stay in their duties." "Yes." Huang Yang performed a bow and then another to Luo Yinxiu before leaving. "It's late, I should return to the palace. Guipin should return too." Chu Qingju gazed at Luo Yinxiu's docile manner and put down the curtain, blocking off the gaze Luo Yinxiu raised. The phoenix carriage traveled away. The Yuan beside Luo Yinxiu, Shu Wen, watched as the carriage became fuzzy in the snow and moved the umbrella over Luo Yinxiu's head, commenting in a small voice, "Zhuzi, Empress is still this warm to others." Luo Yinxiu turned her head to look in the direction the phoenix carriage was traveling. Over there was the Tianqi Palace of the Emperor and Empress. She gave a slightly indifferent smile and sighed, remarking, "If I want to easily live out the rest of my life, the only one I can rely on is the Empress." So, she would deliberately wear old clothing to encounter the Empress at this place so the Empress could understand her circumstances. The days of the Hogong were difficult. It was lucky that she encountered an Empress that was relatively kind. If it was anyone even a bit more callous, she didn't know what her days would be like. The character for happiness was pasted all over Rui Jun Wang Fu. The guests streamed in. Even those Rui Jun Wang had fallen in power, but this marriage had been decreed by the emperor. If they didn't come to congratulate, wouldn't it become embarrassing the emperor? But what they found unexpected was that Rui Jun Wang didn't refuse any of the toast. After the wedding banquet, he was almost completely drunk. Thankfully, the guests remembered that Rui Jun Wang was the groom. Along with Cheng Wang's protection, they didn't dare to make it too extreme. He Qi had never been at peace with He Yuan. He watched as He Yuan drank as though it was water, not wine, and scoffed. If he didn't know better, he would have thought his good deity was drinking away his sorrows. He glanced at Lao Sai who was blocking wine for Lao San and sighed. Who would have thought that Lao Sai would have become the second proudest person among the four brothers? Seeing the other people didn't dare to force it too much, He Qi picked up the wine pot and held a wine cup as he walked in front of He Yuan who had drank enough that his cheeks were red. He asked sarcastically, "San Di, we are brothers. Today is your good day. How about us brothers drink a few cups?" He Yuan carelessly raised his wine cup, smiling and answering, "The Ge's wine, Didi has to drink." Finishing, he took over the fine wine pot and wine cup. Pouring a full cup and swallowing it all, he swirled the empty cup and recited, "Lonling's wine with tulips, the jade bowl becomes amber. It makes the owner and I drunk, and forget where is home. Today, there is wine and there is drunkenness, Didi toasts Gidge." He Chi hadn't expected that He Yuan was even more blunt than he was. Before he could react, the other had drained another cup. It instantly made him lose interest in forcing him to drink. If the person being forced was even happier than the person doing the forcing, where was the meaning? When others saw the scene, they all assumed that Ning Wang was purposefully forcing Roy Jun Wang. Thinking of the battles between the two brothers over the years, no one was stupid enough to involve themselves and silently drank. When He Ming saw the scene from the side, for some reason a certain secret rumor came to mind. It said that San Ji had some affections for the Empress. Realizing that he was thinking about something he shouldn't be thinking, He Ming hurriedly shook his head. There hadn't been any relationship between San Ji and Huang Sao, so San Ji wouldn't have any affections for Huang Sao. It was just the two had almost been married, so other people personally slandered them. Seeing that San Ji was totally drunk, He Ming could only support him back to the Hoyuan. The bride's veil hadn't been taken off, the cups of wine hadn't been exchanged. If the groom was so drunk that he was unconscious, then it was too unsightly. He Chi didn't stop He Ming. In waning interest, he watched as He Ming supported the other away and turned to leave Roy Jun Wang Fu. Looking at the thick layer of snow on the streets outside, he exhaled and said to his attendant behind him, "So uninteresting, let's return." He and Lao San had fought for some many years, but in the end, the throne hadn't landed on either of their heads. Thinking about it this way, it was very ironic. He Yuan supported himself using the door and staggered over to the wedding bed. Looking at the woman with a veil of dragon and phoenix entwined, he took over the stick and took off the veil. His eyes changed and he muttered, "Such beautiful brows." That year on the jade steps under the fireworks, the crimson-clad woman had been also so bright, brows like the sun, bright that one couldn't resist looking just a few more times. Taking out the wine cups, his drunken eyes were smiling. The arms of the two crossed and his voice was hoarse yet full of satisfied mirth. "Then let us be together for 100 years and not separate even when our hair turns white." Lu Yurong looked at the handsome man smiling at her and her heart jumped. Her cheeks became flushed. She took the wine cup the other handed over and as he watched gently, she drained the wine cup. He Yuan reached to push her into his arms, his smile touched yet tender, "So good, so good." Her hand trembled slightly but in the end she slowly embraced this man. The snowy night was long yet short, but for her, it was better than imagined. The red candles of Roy Jun Wang Fu burned for the entire night, just like it was burning a beautiful dream, beautiful yet illusory. In Tianqi Palace, Chu Qingju was laying in He Heng's arms when she suddenly woke up from her dreams. Outside the window, weak light lit up the window silk. Listening to the sound of snow outside, she felt incomparably tranquil, her bed incomparably warm. "Go to sleep," the voice of the man beside her was fuzzy as though he hadn't woken from his dreams. But his arms familiarly pulled her back in, as though he had done it countless times, practiced and matter-of-fact. Chu Qingju smiled, placing her head on the man's chest and slowly closed her eyes. The second year of Jiayu, the eldest imperial son was named by the emperor as Yao I. Shiming, explaining heaven, had bright, shining, light illuminating. The Shijing style of Kuai 3 also said the sunrise is bright. Just this name, it was enough to show the expectations of the emperor to His Highness the eldest imperial son. In this world, was there anything more important than light? And then the empress moved out of the rear hall of Tianqi Palace and moved to Kuei Yuan Palace. Some became to speculate, was the emperor finally going to move his eyes onto the other women in the Hogong? But who knew that the emperor would eat and sleep in Kuei Yuan Palace? No other woman in the Hogong was favored. The love between emperor and empress became even deeper, almost becoming a legend of Dalong about the love between emperor and empress. But right now, the idea wasn't still there. Who knew just how long this deep love of the emperor would continue? Right now, the two empress dowagers in the Hogong didn't express an opinion. Certain senior officials wanted to express their opinions but didn't dare to provoke the emperor's anger. So the emperor only favoring the empress, no one wanted to say anything. Perhaps the people of the entire world wanted to see how long it would take for this good play of the love between emperor and empress to end. No matter how beautiful a play was, it would always have an ending. They really didn't believe that there was an emperor that was faithful to his love in the world. The emperor and empress who had a love stronger than gold in the previous dynasty, didn't their ending turn out terribly? On the tallest stargazing tower in the palace, Chu Qingju looked at the clear blue sky and reached up to block the blinding sunlight. She suddenly asked, Mu Jin, what do you think that cloud would change into? Mu Jin tilted her head up to look at the white cloud. Before she could respond, she saw the emperor at the bottom stairs below the two. At a glance, she knew he was coming to find the empress. Nyang Nyang, the emperor has come. Chu Qingju lowered her head. Watching the man that was hurriedly climbing up the stargazing tower, a smile appeared on her face. Mu Jin looked again at the beautiful pale cloud and thought carelessly, the clouds originally were things that changed constantly. Who knew what it would change into? But that bright sun. It would rise each day, and set down like normal. He came up the tower. Looking at the woman dressed in a crimson phoenix robe in the sunlight, he suddenly thought of a poem called Feng Six Huang. I saw a beautiful woman, after seeing her, it's unforgettable. If I don't see her each day, the thoughts become crazy. I'm like that Feng bird flying high up in the sky, trying to find the Huang bird in the world. I hope my conduct is matching to yours, so we can hold hands together. If the marriage is not allowed, it's a death sentence for me. The smile of a beauty is unforgettable in this lifetime, a downfall in this lifetime. Chapter 121 Epilogue. Painting of a beauty. It was another blooming time of the year. Recently, all of Rui Wang Fu was full of cheer. Wang Yi had just recovered his Qin Wang rank, and Wang Fei was pregnant. This could be considered the best things to have happened in the recent years for Rui Wang Fu. Before marrying into the Wang Fu, Liu Yurong had thought Rui Wang was a lecherous and preposterous man. But only when she had entered the Wang Fu did she know how unfounded rumors could be. The third day after she married into the Wang Fu, Wang Yi accompanied her back to her paternal home and sent away a crowd of Tong Fang from the Wang Fu. Even though some of them had been bestowed down by the emperor and couldn't move out of the Wang Fu, the time that Wang Yi went to those women's rooms lessened dramatically. Gradually, Wang Yi started to like painting. And what he liked to draw best were bright and eye-catching red flowers. She had once asked him why he liked painting such vivid flowers, but he didn't say anything. Before marriage, there was someone else in her heart. But one could not rebel against the imperial order. She had to marry this man who didn't have a good reputation, but her days were much better than she had imagined. But maybe it was the nature of all men to be fickle. After she became pregnant, Wang Yi became interested in a Tong Fang. He visited her frequently in the day, but the majority of the time, he slept in the Tongfang's place. But to her, this wasn't anything major. Since she couldn't marry the man she liked. Who she married, who that person loved, what did it have to do with her? All the servants in Rui Wang Fu knew that the relationship between Wang Yi and the new Wang Fei was better than the old one, so no one dared to slight Wang Fei. Even more, Wang Fei was pregnant. But quickly, servants with keen eyes found the brows and mouth of Wang Ye's newly favored Tongfang were very similar to Wang Fei. The servants then understood that it was that Wang Fei couldn't have relations with Wang Yi due to her pregnancy, so Wang Yi was finding comfort on another person's body. When Lu Yurong heard that rumor, she was even more generous to all the Tongfang and Chisher. In the end, the Hoyuan of Rui Wang Fu became more and more peaceful, drastically different than the smoke and fire of the past. She had once encountered a Yahuan named Yao Shi in the Wang Fu. She recognized this Yahuan. She was the personal maid of Chu Yu Su. She remembered that year when she and Chu Yu Su had composed poetry to amuse Jean and Princess Royal, and the other Wang Fei had judged them. But who knew that the previous Rui Wang Fu would be executed, Chu Ce Fei would die from illness, and she would become the second Wang Fei. Destiny was just this ironic. If people wanted it, they didn't get it; if they didn't want it, it was shoved onto them. Wrongs and rights. By the end, who was the one who was the joke, who was the one that is a pity? The first time she saw Wang Yi could draw people, it was the 3rd month of her pregnancy. At that time, the beginning of summer had ended and she was too hot to fall asleep. She had walked around. For some reason, she walked into the study and saw the unfinished painting on the table. It was a very solitary painting. The blooming plum blossoms, the thick layer of snow, and a half-open exquisite sedan in the midst of the snowflakes. There was a hazy shadow in the sedan, only revealing a shock of black hair and a red sleeve. An empty painting, but she felt as though she was the artist of the painting, and was admiring the woman in the sedan, waiting for her to raise the curtain the entire way. But in the end, the person had pulled down the curtain instead. Sighing, she reached out with a hand to touch the corner of the sleeve that was flying in the harsh wind. But before she could touch, heavy steps came from behind her. She suddenly turned back and saw Wang Yi standing with a cold face at the door. The eyes he had when he looked at her, it was as though he was looking at a stranger, cool and indifferent. Wang Yi, her voice was somewhat dry and she strangely felt guilty. Why has Wang Fei come here? He came up and put away the painting, his voice as gentle as usual. I'll accompany you back, the road is hard to walk at night. She followed him out of the study. Turning back to look at the doors to the study that were already closed, she couldn't resist asking, that drawing, Wang Yi, it seems like the landscape outside our plum forest. He nodded ambiguously, white snow, red plums, it's beautiful to draw. Thinking about the feeling from the painting, she agreed wholeheartedly with Wang Ye's explanation. The white of the snow and the red of the plum flowers were especially beautiful. Even that piece of sleeve was to tempt others' imagination. Wang Ye's skills were getting better and better. Since then, she never saw Wang Yi draw other people, not even her or their child. But Wang Ye's painting steadily became famous in Delong. Many people would give 1,000 gold to beg for one of Wang Ye's paintings. But she rarely saw Wang Yi give them away, the Fu accumulating many. She knew that the relationship between the emperor and Wang Yi wasn't close, so she and Wang Yi rarely were summoned into the palace. Thankfully, Wang Ye's personality was a lot better now, so even though the palace was cold to Wang Yi, if he was summoned, Wang Yi would control his temper and go each time. And in front of the 2 empress dowagers, the emperor and empress, he was extremely friendly. Even she couldn't see any signs of unhappiness. If Wang Yi had been like this in the beginning, the circumstances of Rui Wang Fu wouldn't have been so awkward. Later, the reason that the circumstances of Rui Wang Fu were resolved was actually because the empress suddenly became interested in paintings. So the noble families all wanted to curry favor with the emperor by buying good artwork everywhere in hopes of gaining the empress' favor. The emperor and empress had been together for quite a few years. But after so many years, the love between emperor and empress was still strong. Many people that were waiting for a spectacle were disappointed. In the end, they reasoned that the empress was very good at taking care of herself, her looks were still so seductive after so many years. She scoffed at such sour words. Just by looks, the Empress was beautiful but not to the point of the most beautiful. Even though she had willow brows and phoenix eyes, but those weren't a rarity in the world. Even her own features were the same, but she didn't have the Empress' snow-white skin and composure. Beautiful women could be found everywhere, but what was rare was the qualities of attractiveness. The feeling that the Empress gave others was seductive yet out of the world, vivid yet dignified. Such a contradictory woman was rare in the world, but it was easy for people's hearts to move. Because this disregarded the outer shell and was something that came from the deep parts of the soul, it was hard for others to ignore. When Wang Yi took out some paintings for her to take in the palace, she was very surprised. But she hoped that the Empress would look on Wang Yi's paintings and help Rui Wangfu to not be in such an awkward position, so her child could establish himself in Dalong as he grew up. Kuei Yuan Palace was forever lavish and bright. Every time she entered this place, she would forget this was the Hogong and not some family's compound. Good day, third aunt. The 7-year-old crown prince stood in front of her. His looks were outstanding. Even though he now had Didi and Mimi, but no one in Jing would think that the position of crown prince was going to shake. The Empress was a great woman. She raised the crown prince well. His actions and speech were extremely polite yet didn't seem rigid. Your Highness Crown Prince, good day, she couldn't help but smile. Adults frequently were most soft-hearted for children. Is the Empress free now? Muhu just said that if I encountered you on the road, I should tell you to just head in. The Crown Prince smiled and added, Third aunt, I'm going to accompany Fu Wang to practice writing. Such a young age. It was clearly the Emperor teaching him to write, but in his mouth, it became him accompanying the Emperor. Lu Yurong sighed. It was clear to see how patient the Emperor and Empress were in teaching the Crown Prince. Entering the main hall of Kuei Yuan Palace, she saw the Empress and the wife of Lao Sai were chatting as they sat together. Seeing her enter, they involved her in talking about some of the interesting things around the city of Jing, the mood so harmonious that one could forget it was still the Hogong. However, she still remembered to take out the 3 paintings that Wang Yi gave her. She didn't know what was drawn on the scrolls, so when the Empress went to open them, she was curious as well. The first painting was a cat playing with an orchid. Just a glance made people relax and refreshed. She had seen this before. Wang Yi had done many copies before he made one he was satisfied with. She hadn't thought he would willingly send it to the palace. The second painting was of spring. The green mountains, the blue waters, the hundreds of flowers blooming. This was a scene that couldn't be seen in the Hogong. So beautiful it seemed unreal. Her heart moved when she saw it. Wang Yi had spent more than a few months to finish painting this work. He had hung it in his bedroom to admire, but now he also sent it to the palace. When the third scroll was gradually opened, she was shocked still. She didn't think that this painting that Wang Yi had put away that year would once again appear in front of her. Drawing of winter snow and red plums. The white fingers of the Empress gently touched the corner of the drawing. A long time later, she said, such a good plum blossom painting. The whiter the snow, the redder the plum blossoms. She just was able to see where the Empress had touched, there was half a figure barely discernible. But because that person had been wearing white, it was very hard for others to find. A person's life on earth is like a white steed racing past, suddenly gone. She didn't understand the expression on the Empress' face. She didn't even understand why the Empress would recite such a line. Even when she was leaving the palace, she still didn't understand what the Empress meant. She didn't know if the Empress liked Wang Yi's paintings. However, not long after, the Empress became tired of admiring paintings and turned to favor listening to the stories of talented women across the country. She didn't tell Wang Yi of the 2 lines of nonsensical poetry that the Empress had said. But Wang Yi had never asked her what happened when she went to the palace that time. It was as though nothing had happened, unperturbed and quiet. Later, Wang Yi was pardoned by the emperor and could attend court. But she felt that Wang Yi didn't feel very happy at such a thing. Wang Yi still liked painting, and still didn't like giving the paintings away to anyone. Gradually, the child grew up. The one she had once liked was indistinct in her mind, just like a dream. After a while, one woke up. The day of her son's wedding, seeing her son and Erxi kneel to her, she suddenly realized that this was pretty much her lifetime. After the newlyweds were sent into the bridal rooms, she suddenly turned but only saw the back of Wang Yi as he personally sent the crown prince out the door. The day that Wang Yi left, feathery snow came down from the sky, and the plum flowers in the plum forest had bloomed exceptionally well. She sat at the head of the bed, looking at this old yet still handsome man. Sorrow quietly creeping in. Today's snow is quite heavy. Did it snow all night? He suddenly became focused, even his pale face became red. Her voice was choked. Beside her, her son and grandchildren started to cry. The snow that year wasn't this heavy, the plum blossoms weren't as good as this year. His gaze landed on the branch of plum flowers in the pot and shook his head, saying, "A pity, a pity." Fu Wang, her son, sobbed in front of the bed, and her own eyes started to mist up. "Guaner, don't cry. After I pass, remember to take that painting in the sandalwood box of the 5th square in my study into my coffin." He slowly closed his eyes and sighed. After seeing the ocean, no other water can compare. That's it. That's it. She didn't know how she stood up, how she watched the white banners hung up over the Wang Fu until she saw her son take out the sandalwood box that held the painting. The scroll slowly rolled open and she froze in place. On the painting, it was a busy street during the lantern festival. The beautiful lanterns, a beautiful woman dressed plainly holding a lantern and the fireworks exploding in the sky. It was a painting that was so beautiful one couldn't tear the eyes away. It contained all the feelings of the artist, just to depict the skin of the beauty, the bones of the beauty and the emotions buried deep in the heart. You walk and don't stop, and tear you and I part. Now, there are 1,000 upon 10,000 miles that separate you and I at this end of the world while you at the other. Shaking as she recited the poem inscribed on the painting, Lu Yurong suddenly remembered how he had gently touched her brow on their wedding night. Gently rolling up the painting, she put it in the wood box. Closing the box, she dried off her tears, put this under the pillow of Wang Yi. A painting of a beauty, the bones of a hero. In the end, it was all a handful of dirt. A person's life in this world is like a white steed racing past, suddenly gone. She thought she understood somewhat now. Chapter 122 Epilogue. A legendary love story. In the 7th year of Jiayu, the empress gave birth to the eldest princess for the emperor. With that, the imperial couple had 2 imperial sons and 1 princess, with both sons and daughter. It was all good. For 7 entire years, the imperial house did not take candidates into Jing, and the memorandums urging the emperor to select candidate increased. Even though the emperor might not be willing to take too many women into the palace, he had to think about the other males of the imperial and noble families. Those people wanted to take concubines. This time, He Hing didn't strongly oppose it and agreed to let candidates enter Jing. After 3 months had passed, the female candidates from all over the country were chosen to enter the palace. These women all came from common but good families. Those of rough conduct were eliminated, the same with those who did not have a fair appearance. After rounds of elimination, just 20 people were left. However, those 20 could not be considered as one of the palace. Unless the emperor selected to favor one of them, then, according to protocol, these people would all be sent back to their homes after 5 years. Otherwise, they may be chosen by the empress or dowager empresses to bestow to someone as a concubine. But that was not what they wanted. Hiao, the crown prince of Delong, already knew what female candidates meant even though he was only 7 years old. He looked at his 4-year-old brother behind him, and a profound expression came onto his face. Weren't you learning 1,000-word text recently? Why don't we go ask Fu Wang? Fu Wang had taught me in the past when I was learning to write. Chu Qingju, who was standing behind them, heard her eldest son's words, and couldn't help but laugh. In the past, wasn't it just 2 years ago? She saw the serious expression on her eldest son's face and summoned the 2 sons to her. Tun Tun, Ting Ting, come over. Hiao hadn't thought that Muhu overheard his words. He led Hiting obediently in front of Chu Qingju and said in a small voice, Muhu, why have you come over? Muhu is just walking around. Chu Qingju crouched down to hug her 2 sons and smiled. I'm going to Chaoming Hall to take care of some affairs. You 2 brothers have fun. At noon, Muhu will let the chefs make your favorite dishes. Hiao's foot drew circles on the ground and then he said, Is Muhu going there to select Feipin for Fu Wang? Who told you these things? Chu Qingju laughed, but she didn't fool them because they were young children and explained seriously, Muhu is going to see those female candidates, but not to choose them for your Fu Wang. These female candidates, other than your Fu Wang, they can serve other people. Then I'll let them dig earthworms for me. Hiting happily clapped his hands. I can't find any. Would the people in the palace take you to places that had earthworms? Chu Qingju brushed the bowl-cut hairstyle of her younger son. Don't go to see the fuss. Hiao sternly patted his Didi's shoulder and raised his chin. What we need to do now is to keep Fu Wang further away from these female candidates. Let the Taijian dig for earthworms. Those candidates are too soft, they don't have any strength and can't find any earthworms. Something that you can't do. Can those female candidates accomplish it? Hiting heard his big brother state this, and his chubby face had an expression of realization. He nodded emphatically, and, we'll keep them away from Fu Wang. He turned and tugged Chu Qingju's sleeve. Muhu, I'm also going. Chu Qingju smiled as she looked at her 2 sons. Her eldest son had his hands at his back, expressing, I don't want to see those women, but for Muhu, I can manage to go. At the expectant expression on her younger son's face, she shook her head helplessly. All right, you 2 can come. Seeing Muhu agree to their request, Hiao coughed dryly and then grabbed his Didi's hand, seriously ordering, when we see the female candidates, you have to be good. We are Muhu's children and cannot embarrass Muhu. Hiting obediently nodded his head and patted his chest. Don't worry, Gij. We are crown prince and imperial son. Muhu doesn't need to say anything. The 2 of us together are the most honored and invincible yellow buns. The corner of Hiao's mouth jerked. The words that were used to comfort little children, he hadn't believed them for a long time. He wasn't a child. The female candidates that had made it through the rounds of eliminations felt very insecure. How in love the emperor and empress was had long spread throughout all of Delong. They were afraid that the empress would treat them badly, letting them enter the imperial palace but without a life to enjoy the riches and luxury. However, they found that they were not shortened in their residence or food. They hadn't even seen one of the empress attendants. Only now when they were taken into the Chaoming Hall did they remember this was the last elimination round where the imperial couple would personally interview them. If they were suitable, they could become one of the Feipin in the palace. Some women were still tentative, other women had thoughts that were already soaring. They were all very beautiful females from all over the country. If they could receive the favor of the emperor, couldn't they honor their ancestors and enjoy the great luxuries and wealth? Even more, the empress was now 3 above 2 tens. The emperor was just a few years older than the empress. After so many years, even the deepest feelings would not be as strong as in the beginning. They were all females of 8. Even though they may not be as beautiful as the empress, they were younger, had more vitality. That was their asset. But no matter their thoughts, when the Empress who was not as young or lively as them appeared, they were all dumbstruck. A grand phoenix robe, exquisite hairpins, and skin whiter than snow. She didn't seem like a woman who had given birth to 3 children. When the Empress walked up the jade stairs with the help of a palace maid to sit down on the phoenix chair, they all knelt down and gave a full greeting. The little bit of conceit they had completely disappeared. Stand up. Chu Qingju let her 2 sons sit beside her, smiling as she looked at the 20 or so youthful females below her. Our Dalong has good weather and can raise all kinds of beauties. Seeing everyone today, Ben Gong's eyes feel very good. The female candidates hadn't thought the Empress was such a beautiful and warm person. Many people suddenly had good feelings towards the Empress and forgot their original intentions. Those with keen eyes saw the 2 male children sitting beside the Empress and understood that they were probably His Highness the Crown Princess and second imperial son. Thinking that there was a 5-month-old princess on the knees of the Empress, those that were smart gave up on entering the palace. Regardless of whether or not they would be favored, if they offended the Empress, they wouldn't have good days in the future. The Emperor is busy with state affairs and especially ordered Ben Gong to see you girls. Chu Qingju swept across the expressions on the faces of the women. Seeing that they all had appropriate expressions, she knew that this batch of candidates would be less troublesome than the batch of the last year of Qingde. Are you girls now accustomed to living in the palace? The female candidates standing below all said they were living comfortably and complimented the people of the palace. A few of the females especially expressed their loyalty in front of the Empress. That expressed their true thoughts. Of course, Chu Qingju understood, but from beginning to end, she didn't respond to the good intentions those people expressed. After leaving Chaoming Hall, she said to her sons, "Did you see? Your Fu Huang would not be interested in these kinds of girls. You too are young now. Just enjoy growing up. These things are something little men shouldn't be concerned about. As a son, a man should be concerned about the affairs of Muhu." He Yao raised his chin to say, "Men should be like that." He Ting nodded his head at the side. He didn't really understand, but he heard Muhu and a man. To that, he gave his agreement. Chu Qingju's heart warmed, she crouched down to hug her 2 sons. Muhu is very fortunate to have 2 good sons. In the future, Tun Tun and Ting Ting need to protect your mother and wife. This is what a man should do. The 2 children nodded their heads seriously. Chu Qingju looked at them, a smile blooming. Not long after, most of the female candidates were sent back to their homes. These candidates were all extremely happy when they left. When they got back, if someone asked them, they would all talk about the virtues of the Empress. Many of the poor scholars wrote many stories about the Empress, all beautifying the Empress. Chu Qingju didn't know what happened outside the palace, but something that happened inside the palace surprised her. One of the remaining candidates complained that the Empress had taken all of the Emperor's favor and was too jealous. Once the words came out, it created a storm in the Hogong. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen to this candidate. It had to be said that the Empress treated Hing Fei and Luo Guipin very well. The Emperor resided daily at Kuei Yen Palace, that was the Emperor's decision. No matter how skilled the Empress was, could she tie up the feet of the Emperor? So those kind of words, in the eyes of everyone else, were a great joke. Over these years, weren't there unperceptive palace maids who wanted to turn from sparrows into phoenixes but they had never succeeded? Where did this candidate get the confidence from? In reality, Chu Qingju was also slightly curious. She sat at a pavilion located in the middle of the pond in the imperial garden, and threw the fish feed in her hands to the goldfishes in the lotus pond. Turning, she looked at the female candidate called Chu Bai who was kneeling in front of her. This was a very beautiful girl, her brows carrying proudness that the other girls didn't have. She took the handkerchief that Mujin passed over to wipe her hands and sighed. These years, the palace has never lacked for women who wanted to be Fapine. You are not the first, and won't be the last. Chu Bai had started regretting saying what she said out of anger long ago. Hearing the Empress speak, she obediently knelt, afraid that the Empress would be angry and she would lose her life. As a woman, if one could choose, it would be to receive one person's heart and to not separate until death. Chu Qingju saw puzzlement on Chu Bai's face and smiled, but most of the men of the world are heartless while the women are infatuated. The end is always much crueler than imagined. Hearing this, Chu Bai's heart moved. For some unknown reason, she gathered the courage to raise her head and look at the Empress. She found that there was no anger on the Empress' face, but an unspeakable warmth. Her heart moved, and she regretted her rash outburst even more. Empress Nyang, Chu Bai said, Nubi knows her mistake, and asks the Empress for forgiveness. Stand up, Chu Qingju smiled slightly as she raised a hand. If you really want to become a Fapine of the Hogong, Ben Gong naturally wouldn't stop you, but hope you will not regret it. Chu Bai stilled. She knew that the Empress was not lying, but she was more hesitant now. At this time, she heard the sounds of feet coming behind her. Before she could raise her head, she heard the maids and Tai Jian all kneel down, calling the Emperor. The Emperor. She boldly raised her head and saw the Emperor and Empress were holding hands together. It seemed that, in the eyes of the Emperor, there was only the Empress and nothing else. She respectfully greeted the Emperor, but from beginning to end, the Emperor didn't look at her or ask about her. When the Emperor left hurriedly, that was when she knew that the Emperor still had state affairs. It was only that he had seen the Empress in the pond pavilion, so he had especially come over to see her. How deep did the feeling have to be for him to do this? Chu Bai walked in front of the Empress and made a full greeting. West Region outside official's daughter Chu Bai courageously asks for the phoenix blessing of the Empress, and begs the Empress to allow Nubi to return home to marry freely. She might admire the luxury and status, but she also knew what things could be achieved and what should be given up. Otherwise, the ending would only be a tragedy. Chu Qingju looked at this girl and smiled. As expected, she had not been wrong. A female like this might have a stubborn personality, but she wouldn't lose her head. So she hadn't wasted the effort put in. Since Yihing had no intentions towards other women, why would she, for a virtuous reputation, keep these young women in the palace to be living widows? They were all women. She wouldn't do something so shameless and selfish in order to look good. Chu Bai left like this. Afterwards, she had heard that none of the 5 remaining candidates had become the Fapine of the Emperor and had become the concubines of other people. She looked at her husband who treated her very well beside her, and for some strange reason, she thought about what the Empress had said. As a woman, if one could choose, it would be to receive one person's heart, and to not separate until death. It was only now that she understood the rules the Empress held for the candidates. If the Empress hadn't taken care of them, and let the 20 or so candidates spend 5 years in the palace before they were sent off, their youth would have disappeared. Where could they find a good spouse then? What are you thinking about? The man next to Chu Bai asked. Nothing, Chu Bai shook her head and said, just thinking, if it wasn't for one person, I probably would never have encountered you. Who's that person? She is probably the best woman in the world. She closed the book in her hands, her smile warm and sweet. It's late, let's sleep. The man beside her looked at the book in her hand. Wasn't that a novel about the love between the Emperor and Empress? Supposedly, the imperial couple had great love. After more than a decade of marriage, the Emperor had not changed his love for the Empress. Right now, they had both sons and daughters and were the object of admiration for many people. He smiled. That was probably the most moving, unprecedented love story in the Long Dynasty. Chapter 123 Epilogue That Is Love. Chapter 123 Epilogue That Is Love. He had never thought he would encounter a woman who would move his heart, but the reality was that he really did meet a woman like that. He disliked women who thought themselves smart, and disliked women who thought themselves kind. In a place like the imperial family, people that were too kind never lived well. He also disliked people that were too weak. Weakness usually made people compromise, lose their dignity, and, in order to live, they had the ability to do evil deeds. If a person was forced into such circumstances, what could they be afraid of? He liked seeing Chu Qingju dress herself beautifully, liked seeing her proud attitude, liked how she never backed down when it came to her own interests. For some reason, even though she was his Wang Fei, he felt she lived a freer life than he did. When he finally stood on the 9 levels of jade stairs, he found that this dragon chair was abnormally big and abnormally hard, as though it was exaggerating the elevated status of the emperor. It had an attractive appearance, so Lao De and Lao San fought for this position for many years. Those with kind and soft hearts, even if they managed to survive in the imperial family, wouldn't have good lives. He was not an ignorant person, so he had been tricked by people, and tricked others. In the imperial family, no one owed another person, there was only those who won. Qingju's hobbies always changed constantly. He felt that none of those hobbies were as amazing as her dancing, but to his regret, Qingju didn't frequently dance for him. However, every time she danced, he would see her attractiveness. How could the world have a woman like this? One who could be dignified, lazy, generous, cruel, and seductive. This kind of woman, any man couldn't help but look twice, not to mention she was his empress. Even if he only favored her, where did other people have the grounds to object? He wasn't a useless ruler who had to sacrifice his woman to achieve peace in the court, so on the matter of favoring one person, he wouldn't compromise to anyone. If he easily compromised, where would he have the qualification to talk about love? The reason that the love of an emperor would be doubted was usually due to the excuse of forced with no other way. They would satisfy themselves with other women but act deeply in love. In other words, it was just pretense and not having loved deeply enough. Emperor, are these the paintings you wanted to see? Qian Chong Axian put a sandalwood box in front of the emperor, bending at the waist to open the box before retreating to one side, not looking at the paintings. A few days ago, the empress suddenly became interested in viewing paintings. So many people had sent paintings into the palace. Even Rui Wang Fei had personally sent a few paintings over. But who knew that after 2 or so months, the empress didn't like it anymore. These valuable paintings had been placed into the East Hall of Kuei Yuan Palace. If the emperor wanted to see a painting, he only needed to send someone to take it out of the East Hall. The empress really didn't care. Rolling open, winter snow red plums drawing, he expressionlessly looked at the painting. A beat later, he gave a cold smile. Zhen Sandy has become idle and emotive now that he doesn't attend court. He had heard that Lao San was very good at drawing landscapes. But this painting of his that had people, it was also this touching. Xian Chong Axian saw the expression of the emperor was not well. He remembered that Rui Wang Fei had sent in this painting, and guessed that the emperor still had bad feelings towards Rui Wang, so he didn't dare to speak. He obediently stood to one side and waited for the emperor's orders. Put the painting back. He curled his lips, a hint of disdain revealed. Even though the empress doesn't like to look at paintings and has forgotten all of these things, the servants should still store these away well. Nokai will remember. Qian Chong Axian didn't understand what the emperor intended but still packed away the painting to take back to Kuei Yuan Palace. When he stepped inside the main gate of Kuei Yuan Palace, he encountered the empress holding the little princess as she came out to soak in the sun. He instantly knelt down in front of the empress. The emperor got you to take some paintings out again. The empress gave the little princess to the nursemaid behind her, and bent down to randomly pick up one of the boxes. After she opened the scroll, she smiled slightly. How can I split into several thousand bodies, in order to complement each plum flower on each tree? This person must love plums. Who is the artist? Qian Chang Xian didn't know what to say. Rui Wang Fei had sent someone with this painting. Even the emperor had gotten him to take it out for him to have a look. But the true recipient didn't even know who sent it. Empress, Nukai is also unclear. Qian Chang Xian forced out a smile. The emperor wanted to see some paintings, so Nukai took a few over, and didn't look at them. Nukai doesn't dare to look at the paintings. And there's no signature on the painting. Chu Qingju carelessly shoved the painting into Qian Chang Xian's hands and waved her hand, saying, "Since that's the case, you can put them back." After Qian Chang Xian left, Chu Qingju looked at her daughter, who was deeply asleep in the arms of her nursemaid. Her willow eyebrows were slightly curved as though she was smiling, but there wasn't much mirth in her eyes. After Qian Chang Xian returned, he told the emperor all about his encounter with the empress. Then he found the emperor's temper continued to be good for the next few days. Even the fact the female candidates had entered the palace didn't affect the good mood of the emperor. Those female candidates were generously allowed to go back home to marry freely. Only 5 were left and were bestowed by the emperor to other people to be concubines. Due to this, the crown prince and the second imperial son had been close with the emperor for quite a few days. Especially the second imperial son. He kept on saying the emperor was a good father. He was a Taijian and didn't understand the feeling between men and women, but he knew very well an average person could not separate the emperor and empress. Since the 2 empress dowagers had no objections to the emperor and empress, then who would be so stupid? So like this, 1 year repeated each other. He saw His Highness the Crown Prince turn from a child to a youth, saw the Empress become an elegant and dignified young woman, and add another imperial son for the Emperor. He saw the Emperor spend every day in Kuei Yen Palace as though Kuei Yuan Palace was their home. There was no one who doubted the feelings between the Emperor and Empress. No one picked up the topic of the candidates again. It was like a person who had eaten the same thing for a decade. If his tastes suddenly changed, it was a scary matter. The scholars of Delong were used to the monogamy of the emperor. If the emperor really had broken the feelings one day, how many palace anger poems and calls on behalf of the empress would there be? Even until his middle age, He Heng was always doubtful of one thing. That was, what was the feelings that Qing Ju really had for him? Even though the 2 of them spent every day together, he always suspected that the Empress did not have feelings as deep for him as he did for her. But usually, the Empress was always concerned about him in every way and never disregarded him. Over time, he felt that he was thinking too much. He was demanding too much, and that was why he was disgruntled. He had never asked the question of love and she had never responded. It was only once when he had been seriously ill, and when he woke up, and found Qingju, who was usually so attentive to her appearance, was guarding his side without beautiful makeup, and heavy shadows as though she had cried, that he didn't have the question anymore. Some feelings in this word did not have to be spoken, but if it existed, time would prove it. He seemed to understand what Qingju had said. Love was not spoken, but proven through actions. What he had been discontent with was demanding an empty phrase, and what Qingju could give him was true concern. In this life, with Qingju's companionship, I feel that I didn't waste it. He held her hand as they walked in the deep purples and reds of the imperial gardens. I finally understand why some emperors seek immortality. If possible, I would also want immortality medicine, to be with you forever. Emperor believes this. She smiled as she looked at him. 100 years is just perfect. If it really is thousands of years, who knows if there is a day that dislike occurs. If that happened, it would be better to have a beautiful beginning and a fulfilled ending. He could not object. Maybe the two of them did not believe in love that did not change even as the rocks changed, but they believed they could live for a lifetime together. This is good. Even into death, we will still think of each other. He smiled, but the hand that was holding hers tightened. Our tomb has started construction. A few decades later when we lie in there, we won't be lonely. Birth not of the same blanket but death in the same cave. Separated this life, but the love is everlasting. Chu Qing-ju smiled. Who could think that she would walk to this step with a man, and this man was also an emperor? But now, she has come to believe this phrase. It's good as long as Qing-ju understands me. He Hing raised his head and pointed at the sunset. This sun looks like a poached egg. Chu Qing-ju nodded and said, it's pretty similar. The two held hands and stood together. The sunset drew their shadows out, merging into one, inseparable. Not far away, Hing Fei and Luo Guipin were looking at their backs. The two left silently. When they walked to the drooping flower door, Luo Guipin suddenly sighed. Maybe the emperor just wanted a woman who could see the sunset as a poached egg with him. What picturesque sunset! What glow-like fire! It isn't what the emperor wants. Heng Fei had a light smile as she said, what the emperor wants is a real woman. The four arts are just embellishment, and not needed. Her voice was extremely calm as though the man she was discussing had nothing to do with her, the empress, she's the right person that he met at the right time. This is probably what is called fate. If they had met later, like if the emperor had already ascended the throne, then the empress would, at maximum, become the emperor's most favored woman but not his only one. She, herself, would not become Heng Fei, but one of the many Feipin the emperor would have forgotten. She may not have even gotten the rank of a Guipin. This is our fate. All things in the world have a destiny. You and I are just people that have touched a little bit of good fortune due to destiny. Heng Fei looked away from the sunset. Let's return. I'm just slightly despairing, but I also find it rational that the emperor only favors the empress. Luo Guipin smiled. Ever since the empress allowed me to mourn for my Jojo, I had gratitude towards the empress. So, when Han Qing he wanted you to help her get favor in the beginning, you didn't agree. Heng Fei slightly tilted her face down, her voice very small but enough for the two of them to hear. So, after you knew of Feng Zijin's plan, you allowed her to kill Han Qing he. You even meddled in the affair, but you pushed the suspicions of the affair towards Feng Zijin and Shu Gui Taifei, and not the empress. Luo Guipin heard her words, and slightly paused before smiling. Heng Fei Nyang is a smart person. She wasn't afraid that Heng Fei knew this and smiled even more freely. Heng Fei Nyang might not know my personality. If I remember someone's generosity, I will remember for a lifetime. Heng Fei looked at her smile. A long time later, she sighed, this is good. It was due to the empress that the two of them live comfortably without favor. The imperial couple, as smart as they were, they might not necessarily be ignorant of some things, it was just that they didn't say it. She turned, her eyes passing through the drooping flower door. The emperor and empress were standing there side by side, the pair of shadows even more elongated as though it was one person. Several thousand years later, archaeologists found the combined burial tomb of the emperor and empress of Dalan. To their shock, they found the imperial couple had used one coffin. Two sets of skeletons laid together. It was like the legendary love story of the emperor and empress had passed on for thousands of years, gentle and touching. They found many burial items within the tomb. Countless exquisite hairpins, glass lanterns worth cities, jade instruments and porcelain. Someone even found a stele in the tomb. There was a pair of extremely attractive man and woman carved on the surface. Under their feet were lucky clouds, as though they were ascending into immortality. All of the archaeologists thought that the man and woman were Dalong's Jiayu emperor and Huaren empress. This discovery also made others speculate about the love legend between them. Many people felt that those love story movies and productions about the love between this imperial couple did not even reach the feelings that the emperor and empress had. Not long after, people also found that the woman carved on the stele of the Dolong tomb looked extremely similar to the one in the Lantern Festival painting found in the coffin of Dolong's Zhong Rui Wang. Archaeologists quickly proved that Huaren Empress and Zhong Rui Wang didn't have any romantic relationship. Zhong Rui Wang was not importantly regarded by Jiayu Emperor, and the person in the painting was most likely Huaren Empress' sister because history had recorded that Huaren Empress' half-sister had been a concubine of Zhong Rui Wang. Even though the archaeologists said so, there were still many who looked towards the unofficial histories. They said that Jiayu Emperor's father, Qingde Emperor, originally intended to pair Huaren Empress and Zhong Rui Wang together. Due to many reasons, in the end, Huaren Empress married Jiayu Emperor. As a result, people made a movie about the love triangle between the three and earned a lot of hot tears from people. But even so, everyone believed that Jiayu Emperor and Huaren Empress had deep feelings between them. Even if something did happen with Zhong Rui Wang as the unofficial histories said, that was just a detour in their romance. How history was, it was long buried in the long river of time. No one knows the truth, but people would believe the existence of one thing. That was love. Author's note: I always wanted to write a pure time travel love story and finally did it. This is a fulfilled historical romantic fairy tale. The Emperor and Empress will live happily together. I hope that the readers will encounter the person right for them and live their own happy lives. Chapter 116. A heavy blow. The words of Dai Rong shocked many people. Especially Ming He. He felt his legs weaken. If he had known that this Huguo princess was this bold, today, he wouldn't have done this. If the Empress thought that he had deliberately ushered the person in front of her, then would he have any more good days to live? The Furen of Dong Yu's envoy stared with shock and wide eyes. She used the teacup to conceal her open mouth. She couldn't resist looking at the Empress. How would the Empress resolve this matter? Chu Qingju was slightly surprised at the actions of Dai Rong to recommend herself into the Emperor's bed, but she quickly calmed down. She had heard before about the liberal nature of the country of Jing. Even though she hadn't thought that this Dai Rong princess would speak so blankly of the matter, but it wasn't as though she would lose her composure due to it. Elegantly putting down the teacup in her hands, she used a handkerchief embroidered with a beautiful design to wipe her lips. Where does the princess words come from? If you are in love with the Emperor, why not tell him, instead of telling Ben Gong? This one heard that the Empress of Dolong has the power to manage the Hogong. Then the expansion of the Hogong should be your duty. This one telling you of the matter, it should meet protocol. Dai Rong princess stood from the bench and gave a full bow in the style of Dolong to Chu Qingju. Dai Rong sincerely is in love with the Emperor and begs Empress to fulfill this request. Dai Rong's actions were nothing but forcing the Empress to admit her position. At the side, Yin Lu and the others were gritting their teeth, but due to their status, they stood quietly at the side. The other foreign of the envoys from subordinate countries felt awkward inside. Many of them had heard the rumors from before but knew very well how suspicious the rumors were. But they hadn't thought that this Dai Rong princess actually had an interest in His Majesty the Emperor of Dolong. Right now, they regretted coming with Dai Rong princess to tour the gardens. Such an incident as this, they didn't know what expression was appropriate for this situation. Dai Rong princess isn't wrong. Ben Gong has the power to expand the Hogong. Chu Qingju smiled as she stood, looking from up high down at Dai Rong bent in front of her, but Ben Gong is Emperor's wife, and naturally cannot neglect Emperor's wishes and randomly take other women into the palace. If Princess truly is in love with the Emperor, you should confess to Emperor. If Emperor is willing to take you into the palace, Ben Gong naturally is happy for the palace to have another woman to serve the emperor. Dai Rong didn't think the empress would push the matter to His Majesty the Emperor. After a slight pause, she said, "If that's the case, then please, Empress, act on behalf of this one to express this true love to the Emperor. This one will thank Empress here and now." Finishing, she lifted her skirts and knelt. Even more, she put out a posture of prostration. Ming He saw the Princess of Jing's almost wretched-like actions and looked undetectably at the Empress. Right now, the Emperor should be leaving court. He didn't know if Xiao Ganzi would manage to lead the Emperor over. If this matter wasn't solved correctly, it would blow up. Thankfully, the conduct of the Empress was steady and dependable. If one step was wrong, right, if it is sincere, then why let others tell about it? Wouldn't that tarnish that true feeling? Chu Qingju went forward a few steps, reached a hand in front of Derong, and smiled widely. "Princess, please get up. The country of Jing might be a subordinate country of Delong, but you are still a princess of a country. How can you give such a big greeting to Ben Gong?" When the foreign of Dong Yu's envoy heard it, she felt embarrassed on behalf of Dai Rong. The Empress' words mocked her for lowering her status and being shameless. A princess, regardless of how small the country was, it was still a country. Her conduct represented the country. Right now, she was kneeling and begging just so she could enter the Hogong of Delong to become a Feipin. If the Queen of Jing knew of the conduct, what would she think? Dai Rong had a high opinion of herself, but she wasn't stupid. Naturally, she heard the implication in Chu Qingju's words. Looking at the hand that the other offered to her, she said in a respectful tone, "Don't dare to trouble Empress." And then she stood. She sighed somewhat tragically. This one is a woman. When would there be a time to meet the honored His Majesty the Emperor? It's just a futile hope to expect to accompany him. Princess has only seen the Emperor only a few times, but lost her heart. It really is deep love, and Ben Gong is very shocked. Chu Qingju's face gave a few hints of mirth, was scornful yet proud. "If that's the case, why don't Ben Gong give you a chance for you to tell of your desires to the Emperor?" When she finished speaking, her eyes looked towards the side of the fake mountain. There, standing, was He Hing dressed in the black dragon robes. The other's face was so calm, it was scary. Dai Rong seemed to detect that someone was behind her. When she turned to look, she hadn't thought it was the Emperor. She first stilled and then reacted, given a sweet smile and a graceful bow. "Greetings to the honored Your Majesty the Emperor." The other foreign of the envoys all followed in standing and making their bows. They were all married women and naturally knew how to read expressions. So it only took just a rough glance and they were able to see that the Emperor's expression wasn't too good, and seemed to be indistinctly angry. The atmosphere seemed to return back to when Dai Rong Princess recommended herself as a Feipin. He Hing walked to sit down next to Chu Qingju. He glanced at the Princess of Jing dressed seductively and said in a heavy tone, "Foreign, please rise." Dai Rong, who had been preparing to stand, swayed in her place. She hesitated but in the end still maintained her posture in greeting. He Hing didn't seem to have seen her, and exchanged a few words with the foreign of the envoys before become silent and only drinking tea on the side. The envoys foreign didn't know whether they should leave or sit at this time. They furtively looked at the Princess of Jing who was still locked in her position and didn't dare to breathe. They were all minor subordinate countries. If they encountered any disasters, they had to rely on Delong to give aid. No one dared to be disrespectful in front of Delong's emperor. Not to mention, even if the Emperor of Delong found a reason to take one of their lives, they didn't dare to say anything. Thankfully, the generations of emperors of Delong were not tyrannical, so these years, the subordinate countries had relatively peaceful days. But if they really made the emperor angry, other than the fall of their country, they had no other road to walk. Chu Qingju was also aware the atmosphere wasn't good and said, "Why did Emperor come over?" Zhen heard you came to walk in the garden and came to look. He Heng's tone softened greatly. He glanced at Chu Qingju and saw her expression was normal, and not angry due to the actions of the Princess of Jing before he smiled and added, Zhen will wait to eat the noon meal with you. When the Furen of Dong Yu's envoy heard this, she couldn't help but feel disdain towards Dai Rong. The Emperor and Empress of Dalong were in a harmonious relationship, but this Dai Rong princess was greedy and vain, wanting to enter the Hogong of Dalong. It really was both stupid and shameless. Right now, she was a princess of Jing, so the empress was still courteous to her. If she became one of the Faipin of the Hogong, with the weak strength that Jing had, if the empress wanted to sort her out, the empress would not have the slightest concern while doing so. Just now, Chia has heard something very touching from the princess of Jing. Is the emperor interested in listening? Chu Qingju looked cheerfully at He Heng. After Chia heard it, Chia was extremely shocked. The successor for the country of Jing has already been settled. Due to the separation of genders, Zhen and the princess of Jing have nothing to discuss. He Heng put down the teacup, speaking icily, Your Highness Princess, if your country has something to discuss with my Dalong, then please let your country's crown princess to have an audience. Emperor, this matter has nothing to do with state matters. Dai Rong looked at the frigid eyes of the Emperor of Dalong. She already felt regret inside, but since the words had been spoken, she had to continue. It's this one that is in love with Emperor, and begs for Emperor to take pity. Chu Qingju's eyebrows jumped and she raised a teacup to hide the corners of her lips that rose up. Zhen heard that the country of Jing is extremely liberal. Seeing the princess today, it does live up to the rumors. No pity was found in He Heng for the beauty of Dai Rong and her humble posture. He looked at her and said, the love of the princess, Zhen appreciates, but Zhen is only in love with the empress and has no intentions of taking another into the Hogong. This one doesn't beg to be able to receive the emperor's favor, but only to be able to serve emperor. Dai Rong's eyes brimmed with tears as she looked at He Heng. Is that also not possible? There are countless women in the world in love with Zhen, so does Zhen have to take pity and take them into the Hogong? He Heng's voice became forceful. If Zhen did so, it is not beneficial to oneself nor the person Zhen is in love with. Zhen appreciates the intentions of the princess, but asks princess not to mention this matter again in the future. If the words were spoken more clearly, it would be, there's many women that like me in the world, but do I have to take all of them into the palace? Isn't that disgusting myself? Dai Rong didn't think that when she had said those words, the emperor would so ruthlessly reject her. He even compared her to other vulgar women, as though she wasn't different from other women. She almost didn't dare to look at the faces of the other Furen of the envoys. Because even without looking, she knew that they were laughing at her inside. Because the husbands of these women lost their focus after seeing her, and fawned over her. So these women were jealous of her, and hated her. Emperor, the Crown Prince of Jing asks for an audience. His Highness Qing Wang asks for an audience. Qian Chang Xan seemed to have not seen this farce and with a peaceful expression walked over, disregarding Dai Rong on the way who was still kneeling on the ground. The Crown Prince of Jing. He Heng glanced at Dai Rong. With a dark face, he responded, let the Crown Prince of Jing return. Tell him if the country of Jing still wants Dalong to continue to support them, then to show sincerity. Zhen doesn't lack for women, and even more, isn't interested in the women of Jing. Also, tell SID to wait in the imperial study for Zhen. Zhen will be there shortly. Those words were like a heavy slap to Dai Rong's face. She didn't dare to think when the words reached the country of Jing, how the citizens would think of her. And didn't dare to imagine if the country of Jing was neglected by Dalong due to her, how bad the situation would be. If that's the case, then Ming He, continue leading these honored guests through the garden. Ben Gong should be returning to the palace. Chu Qingju smiled as she stood, telling He Heng, since Emperor has other matters, then go early. Xia will wait for you to return to eat. All right, Zhen will be quick. He lowered his head slightly at the envoy's foreign before leaving with a procession of attendants behind him. From beginning to end, he didn't look again at Dai Rong. Chu Qingju walked in front of Dai Rong, smiling as she said, "Princess, please stand. The emperor is always like this, hope the princess doesn't mind." "This one doesn't dare." Dai Rong felt that even her bones were cold. She trembled with fear as she bowed to Chu Qingju, respectfully sending off Empress. Chu Qingju nodded and took Mu Jin's hands as she turned and walked away. The foreign of the envoys watched as the emperor and empress left, then scornfully looked at Dai Ron. One of the foreign shook her head, remarking, such a pity." A few others followed in laughing. The sound of laughter passed into Dai Rong's ears, piercing and nasty, but she was helpless. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.